This isn't an Apple versus Google thing. None of them are your friends. They're there to make money from you.
Hello and welcome to the Android Police Podcast. My name is Daniel Bader.
My name is, I was about to get a drink of water, but instead I'm saying my name, Will Sattelberg.
My name is Tall Drink of Water.
No, you're short today. I thought we established that. You're shorter than me. There we go. See, this is a gag only for the video watchers. If you're
only for the Patreon subscribers.
If you're listening, like a first of all, you're a true podcast fan, and I respect that. But you do miss out on Daniel slowly sinking from his death.
Not that we ever do this, like
okay.
ever.
Okay.
But can I start the show on something that wasn't in the show notes and is a complete digression?
Yeah, man. We did. Okay, I just need everyone to know we just spent like 5 minutes adding stuff to the show notes. And both of us were like, okay, I think we're ready. Jules, you ready? Like, we're all, okay, here we go. And then Daniel's like, hold on a second, guys. One more.
I have a rant. So I don't know about you, but you know how everybody's saying that YouTube is like winning all of the eyeballs and the earballs and all the balls? Like everybody's just spending more and more time on YouTube.
I get you. Yeah.
It's taking over television. And Google is just like, we're just going to win at podcasts because everybody's on YouTube all the time anyway.
Yeah.
And I, the person who like you, I mean, I've never been as like you spend what 4 days a year listening to Pocket Casts. Every year you tell me how many hours you spend.
It's like 30 days a year.
30 days. Sorry, it's insane. Some insane number of days every year listening to Pocket Casts. And I'm always like, yeah, I'm there too. Like I was listening to my podcast and Pocket Casts. I was listening to audio. I have become the guy who's watching his podcasts now on YouTube. And this happens so gradually because most of the podcasts that I listen to have a video version on YouTube now. And I just started getting, I don't know how this happened, but they just started showing up in my feed and I watch them now instead of listening to them. And it's like the equivalent of reading a book and then having the audiobook waiting for you when you don't have time to read it. Because you can watch part of it and then put it in the background and listen to it when you're not able to watch it. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's the best of both worlds. And I actually think that it's like a complete game changer for podcasts.
Yeah, I'm losing the fight on this, to be clear. If you can't tell, we're recording this as a video podcast. So like, I'm losing. However, I'm a purist and I will always listen to my shows. Because that's what I use. So like that 30 days, which that number was down last year and it will certainly be down this year, but let's round up that the 30 days of podcast listening is like includes time I was mowing the lawn, time I was, outside like clearing our driveway during.
He's got a lawn.
I have a lawn that I've been avoiding mowing, even though it's been a nice couple days. It rained, but it is what it is. But no, like, I love podcasts because of the multitasking aspect of it, of like, this is a thing that is just in my ears and I can go and do whatever I want. And obviously that is changing a little bit with the audience looking for, I think, long form, easily digestible content that they can watch on their TVs. And I'm guilty of this too. I love a video essay, love putting a video essay on my dumb OLED TV. Great. It's not what it was made for at all. It's honestly a waste of the potential that television has. But yeah, I get it. It's just when it comes to like a pure podcast, like I hope you, the listener right now, are driving to the mall or, trimming your hedges.
Going to Hot Topic.
Going to Hot Topic. I'm not, Jules points out Quentin reviews. I'm not watching Quentin reviews. I do draw a line at 13-hour reviews of iCarly, which is a real thing. I don't remember how long they are, but they're about 13 hours. I do draw the line there.
All right, let's move into the actual stuff that we were going to talk about today. So this week, a judge basically just lost her mind at Apple in a follow-up to the Apple versus Epic, I was going to say Apple versus Eric ruling.
Yeah.
And essentially said that not only did Apple ignore the previous order to allow users to offload from the app to a web page in order to get around paying the 30% or 20%, 15% fee, but that it lied, or a couple of the executives lied in the courtroom when posed with the topic of, did you come up with a 20? So they had essentially come up with this 27% commission for payment vendors as a way to essentially ensure that it would still get the 30% fee for every single purchase made outside of the app.
Yeah.
And the prompt boxes were made scarier than they needed to be in order to ensure that users who didn't really understand what was happening would be nervous about giving their personal and financial information to the company that they were buying an in-app purchase for, with on a website. So not only did the judge just like
tear into Apple.
80
pages, and it'll be in the show notes. I urge people to go like read at least a little bit of this 80-page opinion from the judge. It is very easy to read. It doesn't read like a court document. It does in certain aspects, but like it mostly reads by someone who is like fed up because like, okay, let's zoom out. Big picture, right? This is the fallout of the Epic versus Apple or Apple versus Epic court trial that Apple basically won. Epic did not really walk away with any of the results that it wanted from challenging Apple in court. The only thing that the court ordered Apple to do was essentially like require them to allow for, because it was very vague. Like the court was not specific in what they asked for. So it was basically like, you need to allow links and buttons to direct people to purchasing either subscriptions or ebooks outside of the App Store. You need to allow that path to exist. And Apple looked at this order and said, great, we are going to do everything we can to punish developers and users, frankly, with the freedom that was allowed from this decision. So that includes, as you said, the link and style buttons. And I would direct people to Jacob I'm going to screw up his last name. Jacob Kastrenakis over at The Verge. Kastrenakis, thank you. Over at The Verge. That's how you know I haven't met him in person. Who has a really good write-up called Cook Chose Poorly, How Apple Blew Up Its Control Over the App Store. That includes, if you don't want to read the entire opinion, includes the examples of the buttons Apple decided on, the warnings. It's got a very juicy anecdote in it about Apple execs using quote unquote scary language that execs would love to make it terrifying to the user, as you said, Daniel. And it essentially sounds like Tim Cook agreed with the worst actors within Apple. And Phil Schiller was the one person who was like not okay with any of this, didn't approve of the 27% commission on web URL links that they were taking, didn't approve of like these scary buttons. And it seems like he was right, and Apple should have listened to him because they got this rebuke from the judge, which is basically like, okay, so you essentially won this case. We gave you pretty much everything you wanted. We said that this one route needed to be fixed, and instead of fixing it, you actually made it worse. You made it like significantly more frustrating for both developers and consumers, and made it so that in every way anti-competitive and anti-consumer. And so now there is no redo. Like there's a line somewhere in there of like, it might be at the end, but there's no second bite at the apple, which I'm sure the judge was just giggling to herself. I would have been, as I wrote that.
So this is a week after Apple was fined 500 million euros from the European Commission for violating the tenets of the Digital Markets Act, whereby as part of the DMA, Apple is not allowed to prevent users from seeking out or downloading third-party app stores. And Apple made it extremely difficult by charging third-party payment processors a fee for every single user that it processed for the first like million users or something like that. It was similar to this, something that Apple did in order to ensure that its revenue stream was not disrupted. And made it as unappealing as possible for third-party app stores
Yeah.
to launch in the EU because they would need to put up a whole lot of money. I think it was at least $1 million in a trust, essentially, to be able to process all of these transactions up front. So Apple and Meta was also fined 200 million euros, but Apple was fined 500 million euros last week. And then this ruling came out in the US District Court saying that Apple no longer has the right to prevent people from getting free pay, in-app purchases outside of the App Store, which is incredible. And now Epic, because of this decision, has said that if Apple wants to, quote, make peace, it will put Fortnite back on the App Store as early as next week,
Yeah.
as we're recording this. And all of these other companies like Spotify are working together with Epic to try to like use this momentum and leverage to offer alternative payment processes. So Epic is saying they will create an alternative in-app purchase flow that they will process
Yeah.
for third-party developers if they want to offer payments outside of the App Store. Beginning in June, Epic says that for any payment, this is from The Verge, processed via the Epic Game Store, developers will pay a 0% revenue share on their first $1 million in revenue per app per year, and then an 88 to 12% revenue share will kick in. So Epic will keep 12% after that first $1 million of revenue, and the developer keeps 88%, which is lower, obviously, by 3% than Apple's 15% commission it takes on subscriptions, and 30% it takes on all other in-app purchases. For businesses that are larger, I think, than $1 million. But I also think just as like an FU to Apple, a lot of third-party developers are going to want to offer this anyway.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, I think Apple burned a lot of goodwill over the last several years, and I think this in particular has been like, and especially all of the findings that have come out from this report, where it's like, okay, so like you really were trying to not just make this situation bad for users, but also make it so that the developers that made the App Store the cash generating cow that it is, you don't care about how they feel about your policies. You want to make sure you are taking 30% or as close to 30% as you can. And again, like as you said, they have sweetheart deals in some cases, but I can't imagine, if we were to get some kind of EU situation here that I can imagine a third party app store finding some amount of success.
So this is, I mean, you talk about like the transparency and legibility of this court order.
Yeah.
I just want to read a paragraph
Please
of
do.
this because it's so flat in its scathing that it's just like, it's hard not to read this as the judge is like personally affronted by what happened. So in stark contrast to Apple's initial in-court testimony, contemporaneous business documents revealed that Apple knew exactly what it was doing and at every turn chose the most anti-competitive option. To hide the truth, Vice President of Finance Alex Roman outright lied under oath. Internally, Philip Schiller had advocated that Apple comply with the injunction, but Tim Cook ignored Schiller and instead allowed Chief Financial Officer Luca Maestri, who's since retired, and his finance team to convince him otherwise. Cook chose poorly. This is a direct quote from the document. The real evidence detailed herein more than meets the clear and convincing standard to find a violation. The court refers this matter to the U.S. Attorney for the North District of California to investigate whether criminal contempt proceedings are appropriate. Yeah. This is an injunction, not a negotiation. There are no do-overs once a party willfully disregards a court order. Time is of the essence. The court will not tolerate further delays. As previously ordered, Apple will not impede competition. The court enjoins Apple from implementing its new anti-competitive acts to avoid compliance with the injunction. Effective immediately, Apple will no longer impede developers' ability to communicate with users, nor will they levy or impose a new commission on off-app purchases. This happens today. There's no delay here. Apple has to change its behavior today. It is remarkable.
Yeah.
I genuinely, if Apple did not see this coming,
no,
it's just hubris, straight up hubris.
you have to view the full picture, which is that I think in this judge's eyes, and certainly in mine, like Apple won this lawsuit with like one fairly minor slap on the wrist. And if you read their like comments, they're like, oh, like we might lose tens of millions of dollars depending on how we like implement the changes that we've been asked by the court to change, which is how all of this starts. Okay, now we're here. Like the punishment for you essentially deciding that you didn't like the outcome you mostly won means that we're now going to have to deal with the judge being like, okay, no more. I don't have any more patience for you to like try to find your way around this. I left this open for you to implement however Apple saw fit. And you implemented a situation that was like as bad, if not worse, than what was there before that I already said was like anti-competitive. Like it's nonsense. And again, like you said, like they were in court lying. Like they were in court in January of 2024 saying, this is, I believe, a quote from Alex Roman at Apple, who was asked on January 16th, 2024. The judge asked, and I take it that Apple decided to impose a 27% fee on linked purchases prior to January 16th, 2024, correct? Alex Roman says the decision was made that day. The judge asks again. Apple had no idea what fee it was going to impose on linked purchases until it announced it on January 16th. And Alex said that's correct. And we have the documentation that proves that like that was a lie. They were talking about this since the summer before. And so it's all hubris of like you guys won so big in court that you were like, I don't know, I guess we don't need to do the one thing the judge asked us to do. It's terrible. And frankly, I think it shows, especially when you combine it with the fallout and the debacle that I would say Apple Intelligence qualifies as. You have people asking whether it constitutes false advertising. Tim Cook has had a very bad year or so as like the leader of Apple. And I think the fact that, if you want to say there are bad actors within Apple that are offering bad advice, that's one thing. But at the end of the day, that company is run from the top down in the way that it was during the Steve Jobs era. And like Tim Cook was the one who said, yeah, do this. Like he is as responsible for these actions as the people who are named a few more times within the actual judge's opinion. So I don't know. I think this is a mess for them, frankly.
It's not only a mess, but it's an indictment of the toxic culture that is built up inside the company as hardware profit margins have become tighter.
Yeah.
Like years ago, this would have been lauded as a masterful business move, right? And it was Tim Cook moving from relying on hardware profits to software and services profits, like 100%. That was the right move as peak iPhone hit. But what it's done is just milked every single penny at the expense of user experience.
Yep. And
it didn't have to be this way, right? Like, as you said, they basically won this lawsuit. They could have just made it easy. It's the same as Google, right? Like Google making all these sweetheart deals and preventing Samsung and OnePlus from launching third-party app stores or suppressing their potential success, knowing that probably 99.9% of in-app purchases were still going to be made through the primary app store. Realistically, Spotify being able to tell you that you can save 30% by going to a link and then going through that off-app workflow and buying, a subscription through that, like Apple's still going to find a way legally of making that a worse experience for you.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, it's just like they're going to prevent you from like uploading or syncing through iCloud or something.
Yeah.
But like the impetus to just like play by the rules was not there. And it will have ended up hurting them much more in the long run.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just find it to be offensive in some ways. Like even not quite as much as what Google did by essentially paying companies to not pursue agreements with Epic and others, and also because Google lied and said that we're still open and you can still launch third-party app stores. At least like Apple's
being truthful that they don't want any openness on their platform.
There you go.
Yeah, man, I agree with you. All of these court cases, not just Apple and Google, and honestly, even outside the court cases, but like I feel like this is all a deep indictment of the current state of these companies. I don't even necessarily mean like the state of like the tech industry as much as I just mean like the leadership in all of these companies have decided that there is no limit on how greedy they want to be. And maybe they've always been like this, but it has certainly become far more open to the public. Mark Zuckerberg has always been on this. You can go back to like the earliest messages he sent about Facebook where people were like, I forget who DM'd him and was like, "Wait, so they're all just handing you their personal information?" He's like, "Yeah." Like, and I think he called them dumb fucks. But that seems to be the vibe of Silicon Valley now, of the tech industry, which is just that like we are going to take all that we can and then we're going to take a little bit more, and if we have to fight it in court, we will draw it out for as long as we have to until we are at least semi victorious or we can figure out more ways. And this is kind of how it feels, where it's like, okay, so Apple took one minor loss in a lawsuit that it otherwise won, and its decision was to flaunt what the judge asked for and find workarounds and loopholes within the fairly vague order to make more money. That's where we are. And that's all of these businesses. This isn't an Apple versus Google thing. None of them are your friends. They're there to make money from you.
They're there to make money from you, but there's also the balancing act of keeping things relatively. I mean, look, that whole argument of keeping you safe and secure and private and having your technology easy to understand and easy to use, I think held some water a while ago. But when Apple is rumored to be making the iPad into a Mac and adding a desktop mode to the iPhone, because like what else is it going to do?
The iPhone is already too complicated to use. There are things on iOS like currently where I'm like, why is this only designed this way so that it's not specifically using the same method to do something as Android? Like that, like truly it feels that way a lot of the time.
But that's what I'm saying, right? Like that whole idea of safety, security, straightforwardness, simplicity, ease of use, like that doesn't really hold water anymore.
Right.
And I think it just does not have the strength of argument that it used to. Yeah. So yeah, anyway, I think we should move on, but let's keep this kind of in mind as we talk about everything else happening this week, because
we should say Apple's earnings are also out like an hour after recording this right now. So like there might be even more on the story. There might not.
I don't think they'll talk about it because they're going to appeal the decision.
They're going to appeal. Yeah. But
yeah, let's move on to Samsung. Just very, very briefly. You wrote this up yesterday.
Yeah.
Stellar Galaxy S25 sales helped Samsung soar to its strongest quarter ever. What's going on here?
Yeah, Samsung made about 55 billion USD in Q1, which is an all-time quarterly high. It's about 22% bump in net profit over, I believe, Q4. I don't believe that was year over year. I believe that was compared to Q4. And they directly attributed that success to the S25 series alongside their memory business, which they said they see high demand for both now and in the future because of AI. But aside from that, they were like, yeah, the S25 series is off to like a fantastic start, and people are buying those three phones. And they teased the S25 Edge as an additional way to, and I'll quote here, to sustain flagship-centric sales amid weak seasonality. But it basically seems like they are happy with how the S25 series is doing.
What's going on with the Edge? It's supposed to launch in May, right?
Yep. I don't have any other information. Like it was rumored for months to be April, and then they were like, just kidding, or like the rumor mill was like, just kidding, it's May, and that was the last update on it. So we've seen even more leaks lately. Like we've seen, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, there was a full specs leak that detailed everything you would want to know, including the.
What did it say?
It said there's a 3,900 milliamp hour battery in the Edge, and then it's going to die after 8 hours. It didn't say that last part. I'm adding that editorially. Yeah, I don't know. It said that it's a phone. It's a thin phone. I don't I don't want to judge a device before it's announced, but I still don't fully understand why this exists other than to compete with Apple. But here we are. The rumor is that it's coming this month. I don't know when it will specifically go up for sale. I don't know when it will specifically go up for sale in the US, because we've heard that it might just start with South Korea and China availability. And I can't imagine tariffs are helping that. Samsung did briefly comment on tariffs, or as it called it, macroeconomic uncertainties, which is a longer way of saying tariffs. But yeah, basically they're like, we think the second half of 2025 is going to be great if things chill out. If things don't chill out, I don't know, which is kind of the earnings report of like every company over the last couple of weeks as Q1 reports are coming out, where especially like the auto industry is straight up like erasing their 2025 predictions and just being like, we have no idea. We have zero. We cannot give you guidance on what we expect our sales to be because we don't know, which is a really fun.
I mean, this feels like every company is saying the same thing.
Yeah, basically. How can you not? There's no other answer. I mean, it's not even like you can be like, well, okay, all of the components or hardware we have coming in from China into the US are subject to 145% tariffs, because those numbers change on like a every other day basis. Like the auto industry got a new break via executive order yesterday. The tariffs are continuing to be challenged in court.
The de minimis exemption ends today.
There we go, which is yes.
So Shine and Temu are SOL.
Correct. We saw, there was that brief fight between the White House and Amazon yesterday over whether Amazon was considering putting the price of tariffs on their website, which they should. That is allegedly what they weren't even considering. They were going to maybe do it in Amazon Haul, and they apparently have decided not to do that either. But they should. Of
course, they're not going to do it.
But they should. I think it would be and I'm stealing this from another podcast, but it would be akin to showing taxes when you check out. The taxes are not part of your subtotal. They're added on, and then you see your final total. The tariffs should probably be treated the same way to make it clear to people what this price is. But it's not going to happen. Oh, and we've seen, the OnePlus Watch 3 got another price adjustment this week. It's now down to $350. It was supposed to be $330. Apparently, this is where it's sticking. We'll see. Oh, I was going to say the OnePlus 3T not coming to the US, which might have always been planned, but certainly I think you and I had on a previous podcast theorized that phone was not coming to the US because of tariffs, and I wouldn't be surprised if tariffs played a role in it. So
I would not be surprised as well, except for the fact that this phone does not really need to exist outside of China anyway.
But I want it, Daniel, but
you don't want it. You're going to put it. You're going to get it, put it in a drawer, and never look at it again.
No, I liked the 13.
Exactly. And this is not that. This is a lesser 13. Use
fine.
The freaking 13.
Too big.
And the 13R exists too, so you don't need the 13T.
Also too big.
Whatever. Okay. There's a bunch of Google news prior to I/O. Yeah. One of them is that Google basically said that there will be no Android announcements at I/O because they're going to be doing this big, what is it called?
The Android show.
Android show on May 13th.
Yeah.
So
it's like their internal podcast they do sometimes, basically. I don't think they call it a podcast, but it looks and sounds like a podcast. So.
Yeah, it's going to be basically just a podcast announcement. It'll be a marketing opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes a lot of sense, though, because if you remember last year's I/O, it was very disjointed. It was hard to follow, I'd say, specifically because like they kept kind of switching between like a consumer's view of AI and then a developer's view of AI, and back and forth they went. And then, an hour and 20 minutes or something into the show, they were like, oh, right, Android. Here's 10 minutes on Android. And they did 10 minutes on Android. And they were like, great, back to AI. And if you can't give Android its own section in that show that it's worthy of, like a long enough section to discuss changes coming this year, then I think it makes sense to split it off in its own thing and let the main keynote be whatever that main keynote's gonna be. It's gonna be about Gemini. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, exactly. So there were a bunch of Gemini related announcements this week, some reporting as well. One of which is that Sundar Pichai hinted that Gemini would be added to the iPhone soon. This was announced last year when Apple essentially admitted that Apple Intelligence was not ready. Its local models were underbaked. Definitely didn't say that, but we now know that the ChatGPT integration was done in order to get ahead of the fact that its internal models were just like small potatoes.
Yeah.
And if it needed to access an AI on the internet, it would just fall back to ChatGPT. We now know that if you basically ask it for anything, it will go to ChatGPT. And Google was going to be in that mix anyway. So you'll be able to choose between ChatGPT and Google Gemini for third-party AI integration at some point now. Google also added new widgets to its dedicated Gemini app on both iOS and updated them on Android. So you can now just like tap the home screen and activate Gemini, which, you know, is a feature that every AI tool needs. This happened the same week as Meta changed its Meta View app, which was focused just on its AR glasses. Now it's just called Meta AI. It's a complete redesign. You can now talk to your Meta AI. You can date your Meta AI. You can sext with your Meta AI if you really want to do that.
There is not a company right now that I'm less interested in dealing with than Meta. I swear to God. Like everything this company does, is like the biggest turnoff to me. So I guess Meta, I'm not interested in dating you, is what I'm saying.
If you read the Wall Street Journal report on this, they basically spent a month talking to these chatbots. And what's really weird about it is that Meta paid a lot of money to license the voices for people like John Cena and Kristen Bell, so that if you're talking to your AI, it can sound like a regular person, and then went and activated horny mode.
Great.
And didn't tell
Good.
Disney
Perfect.
or the people that signed the contract about this. So you could essentially get Kristen Bell
Great.
to voice her character from Frozen.
Cool.
And do really dirty things with you, or John Cena. Like, it's just like, it's not okay.
Great.
This is weird.
I don't want to say that I think people who played a role in turning this on should go to prison, because I don't want to get sued. But I do think there should be repercussions for this, because those are like terrible things to do to people. And again, this is kind of getting back to what I said of just like, none of these companies are acting in anybody's best interest other than the interests of the executives running them, who are trying to make money however they can. And so if they see that there is a demographic of user that is interested in sexting virtual John Cena, why not chase that money, no matter the ethical quandaries attached?
Look, I think the move to be like ultra libertarian Zuckerberg has allowed him to just sort of take off the veil of its family. Yeah. Well, it's never really been like a family friendly past, but like it always tried to promote Facebook as like a relatively benign brand. And it's now just leaning into the fact that like, we don't need content moderation. We can allow our AIs to go off the rails if we want, because ultimately you're the person making the decisions, right? You're choosing to be on our platforms. Our terms of service are loosening, and you can pay the piper if you want. Like you can pay the consequences to have an inappropriate conversation with fake John Cena, but that's on you. And if you want to be on Facebook, then you can be exposed to anti-trans and other hateful literature or conversations. That's up to you. But we are just providing this canvas for which anybody can do anything. And the fact that Llama is ostensibly open source means that plausible deniability goes away, because Meta basically says, like, we release this into the world. There are closed source versions of this that will power our products, but anybody can take our source code, do whatever they want with it. And if it comes back to us, it's not our fault.
I'm just really tired of
you can just stop there. I'm just really tired is the end of the sentence.
It's just, but like, that is like an attitude shift that has affected like the world at large, or at the very least the country I live in. And Daniel, God willing, the country you'll live in someday too.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. It just sucks. It's just like a bad environment to be in. And it's a bad, like the idea that all of these executives are washing their hands of any kind of like repercussions or consequences that come from the actions they take or approve is maddening. And I'm
Well, it's
tired of it.
also just this new approach to the open web in general,
Yeah.
right? Like you want to, although Meta is not an like open web, it's its own ecosystem,
Yeah.
but it pretends that it's an open ecosystem within its closed ecosystem, and you can take that, take from that what you will. So
Yeah.
a few other Gemini related things. Google is shedding its One AI premium exclusivity for AI mode in search. Basically, before, if you were in the US and you wanted to use its AI mode in Google search, you had to be on its One AI premium subscription. That is no longer going to be the case. You can expect ads coming to your AI powered by Google. They will power the ads that go into third party chatbots, which, of course, that was going to happen. And finally, and I think this is maybe the most interesting announcement this week, Google now lets you edit photos in Gemini directly. You've been able to upload photos to Gemini for a while now. Gemini can like look at the photo and explain what's going on, summarize it, whatever. Now you can actually ask it to do things, right? Lighten the shadows, move the subject, basically anything that you were manually doing or like prompting Google to do in Google Photos through Magic Editor, you can now do through Gemini. I think this is interesting. This is not like a huge revelatory thing,
Mhm.
but similar to how Photoshop's generative AI tools have allowed people to like make larger changes to photos in a way that is non-destructive, but also kind of it allows less creative people to affect images creatively. I think this democratizes image editing. As long as Google follows the rules around watermarking and things like that, which it says it's going to do, I actually think this is a really cool thing, right? Like the example here is there's a dog lying on a piece of grass. You ask Gemini to add a hat to the dog, and then it does it. And then you move the dog to lying on the beach instead of the grass. Like that's all good.
Mhm.
But for me, like I may not know exactly how to add more dynamic range and lighten the shadows and like add the right amount of warmth and sharpness and blah, blah, blah. Right. I'm not some photo editing expert, but I really just want the photo of my kids to look slightly better
Yeah.
and to be less blurry. And you can just type that into Gemini and it will just do it all, do all of those things. I would not be surprised if like this is the next evolution of the Magic Editor where you're not asking the Magic Editor to like add a spaceship to the background of your photo, but you're asking the Magic Editor to like do these subtle things that make your photos better, or just like somehow like just extract a little bit more fidelity out of the photos. And I can foresee this happening to like groups of photos. So, hey, take this album of 20,000 photos in Google Photos and just apply this big ass filter to it, make them all better in similar ways.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think that there's a lot of potential here. And that's where one of the benefits of AI, in my opinion, comes through pretty clearly.
I think I'm just tired of prompts, is where I'm at. I'm tired of having to reprompt things. And this is maybe coming from me because I am a person who is experienced in like photo editing. I'm not like a master or anything, but I like know my way around Photoshop. And I can envision a world where the ease of use that this Google blog makes it look like, with its example of the dog with the hat in on the beach, is not as simple as typing in like give my dog a hat and move it to the beach, but instead takes you 7, 8, 9 prompts for Google to get remotely right, and like maybe you have to start over. And I'm purely basing this on any time I've used like image generation prompts where it's like you just don't understand or flat out like did not do the thing that I prompted you to do, versus like learning and then using an actual tool like something like Photoshop's tool set. And I don't mean it's AI stuff, but like it's legacy have been there for as long as I've been on the planet kind of tool set. where you're doing a thing and it's just done right the first time because you did it. I know that sounds very old man yells at cloud, and I'm not trying to yell at a cloud or the cloud, but yeah, I don't know. Like I guess I would have to try this out for myself, because I feel like having to restate prompts over and over again is like the biggest thing that's killing any of my interest right now in chatbots. And I'd be curious to see how this works in Gemini.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know if anybody really wants this, but I think
No, I don't mean to rain
it's a
on your
good
parade,
idea.
and I think it's good to be optimistic about this stuff. I just like I wish we wish that AI companies would spend some time trying to like get their respective models to like listen to prompts a little bit better, or a little bit more accurately, rather than just having to push more and more and more features into every asset of these tools. And they haven't really gotten better, they've just gotten more. Like there's just more things you can do now. And in some cases, I'm not saying, of course they've gotten better in certain ways. Like ChatGPT's image generation is better than it was even like a year ago, but it's frustrating. And again, maybe this is just because I'm someone who does the manual work related to this sort of thing. I shouldn't say manual work. That makes it sound like actual labor and not clicking a mouse and some keyboard and some buttons on a
But I
keyboard.
mean, there is labor to it, and I think
Sure.
there are a lot of people that will always want that. But there's a certain skill set that is required, or a certain amount of time that that is required to learn the skills. Yeah. And frankly, like as we've seen with apps like CapCut and Canva, like people don't want to spend that time.
Absolutely. And I'm not trying to even like get like like Photoshop is chock full of shortcuts, right? Like and I believe it's AI powered. I believe it's Gen AI powered, but like the like last year or two, Photoshop's like remove background tools have gotten really good. Like it basically makes the mask for you and like allows you to edit it really quickly. And it cut a ton of time off like anytime I need to remove the background from an image, because I don't need to use the magnetic lasso or just manually erase everything I need to erase. I can kind of let Photoshop do 90% of the work and then come in and clean it up a little bit. And I'm fine with that. I guess maybe that's where I come in with stuff like Gemini, where there is no option to let it do 90% of the work and then clean it up. It's kind of just good or bad. It's what you asked for or it's not. It's binary in a way that tools like Photoshop are not. When you use something like CapCut, like those tools allow you to get a lot of the way to where you need to be. And for some people, that might be good enough. And for others, that might be good enough as a starting spot to then do the rest of the work manually. And
yeah,
Gen AI isn't really there.
No, I mean, it will be in a couple of years.
Yeah, I'm just commenting on it where it is now.
Agreed. Okay, I want to talk a bit about Android. So this week, Michelle Rahman, as he is wont to do prior to I/O, just got a bunch of, he flagged his way into a bunch of changes coming to Android 16.
Yeah.
This has to do with the new Material 3 experience, or whatever it's called. Expressive. I got the name wrong last week too. So this is going to come presumably with the final version of Android 16, maybe later this year with Android 16.1, but we know that there will be some pretty significant visual changes coming to a future version of Android. Yeah. He's got some screenshots that we will post in the show notes. But again, when we say big visual overhauls, right, this is not like a massive Android lollipop style overhaul.
Yeah,
this
not
is more
Android lollipop.
subtle.
It's not Android 12. I would say both of those are like full redesigns, and this is more of like a revamp, right? Like
yeah,
this is a refresh.
It's a modernization, if you will. Yeah. And I think, there's a lot of blur, which is also coming to iOS 19, and it's just a cleaning up of the UX. It's an acknowledgement that phones have faster GPUs than they used to, and that you can have blur effects, like live blur effects. You can have smoother
this is
animations.
The Windows Vista of Android. Oh my God, Daniel. We've made it.
Hold that thought. I have something to say about Windows Vista later, but yeah. So you can go to the site and check out the changes coming. I like a lot of them. So there's some color coming to the settings menu. There's changes reported to the quick settings toggle, where like with One UI 7 and Color OS and all the other big Android versions now, you'll be able to swipe between the notification shade and the quick settings menu. A lot of people don't like that change, and you won't be forced to use it. But with this change will come some lightening, some blurring. You'll have like a background. It won't just be black. There's some changes to the lock screen, the app drawer, right? Like just small things that you can see Google making revisions on. And yeah, I think overall it just looks like a solid improvement.
Make things feel a little fresh, basically. And we should say it's not in the show notes, although it maybe it will be now. Michelle also shared some animation changes this morning as we're recording. So again, very minor things, but it's a little bouncier, a little more responsive. And I'm not going to be able to think about Android 16 as anything other than the Windows Vista of Android now. So thank you for putting that in my head, Daniel.
Other than that, I mean, we'll have to wait until the Android show next. It's 12 days from now. So as we're recording, May 13th, lots more to discuss then. But you wanted to discuss keyboards for a few minutes.
I would discuss keyboards for a few minutes. Yeah, we ran an article over the weekend from Parth titled "I tried Google Keyboard, Samsung Keyboard, and Apple Keyboard for a month, and here's how it went." I would encourage people to go read that article. But rather than talking through an article neither of us wrote, I'd like to get your input on all three of those keyboards, actually, Daniel, because I'm sure you have experience typing on all three of them.
I do, but it's interesting. I used to have a lot of opinions about keyboards. Okay. I used to be the guy who would like optimize the crap out of his keyboard and switch from Gboard to switch to SwiftKey and all the weird and wonderful Android keyboards that used to exist.
This is like saying you breathe oxygen, Daniel. Like I could have just told this about you. Like I could have told you did this.
Of course I did. And now I don't care because Gboard is the only option for me, and Gboard is so good. I think the only thing I will say is a decade after Apple ostensibly improved its autocorrect, and a few years after it added a transformer, whatever the hell it thinks a transformer is, to its keyboard, the iOS keyboard is still the dumbest piece of crap
so bad
on the planet. And I do not understand how a phone that can basically do everything is still incapable of offering an autocorrect solution that works consistently.
You, the listener or viewer, might not use iOS particularly frequently if you're an Android fan, but like anytime I'm typing on an iPhone, it is like pulling teeth compared to Gboard. Gboard is like, it's probably not flawless. Like if I really sat down and thought about it, I'm sure I could come up with complaints about Gboard, but in comparison to both Apple's keyboard and Samsung's keyboard on their respective phones, it's like, it's not a competition. Samsung's is terrible. I truly don't know what's wrong with it. It feels bad to type on, as in like, I don't think it traces where your fingers hit the keys correctly. Like I genuinely think it's like, for some reason, it like, I don't know. I know people like that keyboard. There are Samsung keyboard fans, but every time I try to type on it, and past and future guest Joe Maring, I know, has written a very good piece. I don't remember if it was at Digital Trends or Android Authority, but very good piece about typing on the Samsung keyboard that I would point people towards, that I make a small cameo appearance in via screenshot. But yeah, it's terrible. And then on top of it, Apple's keyboard for at least 2 years, if not longer, I think we might actually be going on 3 years now, has had a bug where sometimes it's auto prediction. If you send a message while it thinks you want to type something else, it will just insert gibberish into your message and screw up your message. And this was a thing I ran into for a long time. I think I first noticed it while reviewing the iPhone 15 Pro Max, or maybe just trying out the iPhone 14 Pro Max, because I didn't review that one for AP. I just used it and wrote a couple features about it. And we're several iOS versions since then, and they have not fixed this. And in fact, this is not a me problem. I've seen it on several phones. Other tech journalists I've noticed that I've told about have noticed it. Even people not in the tech field have noticed it once I point it out to them when we're in group chats together. And it's awful. So like, Gboard, again, I'm sure I could think of critiques, but it's just night and day compared to the competition. And I think it's kind of embarrassing that no one has tried to catch up to Gboard. I don't know.
Yeah, you know what's interesting is that we spend a lot of time criticizing Google, and rightfully so. But there are some products that I think the company is so far ahead
Yeah.
of the competition with that it's not even close. And Google Photos is one of them. Like, I'm not going to say Google Photos is a perfect product, but it is pretty close, in my opinion, to a perfect product. And I will say the Gboard has become pretty close to perfect. Like,
Yeah.
I do not have a complaint about it. You can resize it. You can change the layout if you want to. You can add symbols. You can trace. You can type. It just works. It is a beautiful experience. And every time I leave Android to go back to iOS, I miss the typing experience.
I can think of one complaint off the top of my head that I will share. And this might be more of an Android thing. To be honest, I have not really used a third-party keyboard in 2025, a decade probably, not really. But Gboard, or maybe just Android in general, just does not work well with non-Google password managers. And I constantly have issues with Gboard not popping up my password manager of choice when I'm trying to log into things. That's pretty small potatoes compared to the other issues, to being unable to type accurately on other phones. So like, if that's the only problem with it, I'll take it. And frankly, the existence of Emoji Kitchen, which Google better not screw up with AI in a couple weeks at I/O, makes a difference anyway. So
we'll see. Google has been known to screw things up.
Yeah, I have to write my
against
piece
its best interest
about not ruining. It's just Emoji Kitchen is so good and Genmoji is so bad, and I'm so terrified they're gonna like pull a Genmoji with Emoji Kitchen because Apple did it, and so we have to do it, and they're gonna ruin Emoji Kitchen is my gut fear. So fingers crossed they don't do that.
That was it for our show notes, unless you had one more thing that you wanted to talk about.
Oh, I had an addendum to my Switch 2 pre-order story.
Yeah, I want to hear it.
Saturday morning, I woke up a little earlier than I wanted to, because it's the weekend. I wanted to sleep in. I had a 4-day weekend, so I really wanted to sleep in. Instead, I woke up at like 7:30 and scrolling through social media, and I see that overnight Walmart has had Switch 2 in stock on and off again all through the night. And I'm like, well, it's been like 6 hours since this started. Like, certainly nothing is in stock. And then I try to pre-order it. It says it's out of stock. And I go, yeah, that makes sense. And this is the bundle I'm trying to pre-order. Listeners might remember that I was able to scoop up a console-only Switch 2. And then suddenly I just like I read online that if you just hit pre-order enough times, it eventually just gets in your cart. And that worked. And I checked out. And so I might have 2 Switch 2s coming to my house on June 5th. One a console-only version, one a bundle. Either way, as long as one or both of them aren't canceled, I should be good to go. If I do get both, I have a friend who will be selling the console only one too. But
I mean, you could probably make $1,000 profit on day one selling your Switch 2.
Absolutely, but I'm a good person, Daniel, which is why
so you're only going to make $800.
Wealthy. I'm selling it for the exact dollar amount that my credit card will be charged for, because I'm
good for you.
Friend.
You're a mensch. Okay, what is making you happy this week?
Besides my Switch 2 pre-order, Maddie and I responded to Pit Fever, HBO's The Pit, Max's The Pit Fever, by instead starting ER.
Yes, amazing.
And the thing is, now that we've hit the second season of ER, and I will say I have not caught every episode. Maddie was watching some of it while I was in New York for Razor last week. But the thing about ER is that they don't make television like they used to, man. Like, God, what a TV! That is like a TV show. And frankly, the entire cast is great. At least, like in the first few seasons of that, we have not gotten to the rest of it. Although I have stumbled on like 20 names where I'm like, I truly did not know Linda Cardellini was in 4 seasons of ER. Who
right?
knows? I straight up just did not know that. But no, I think it should be cheating and frankly illegal to have George Clooney on your TV show. It's kind of like a hack to having a good TV show. Yeah, ER is great. Turns out that show everyone likes is good. I know I'm 30 years late to this because I believe.
Oh, you've never seen it before?
I've never seen ER. No, it went off the air when I was.
Okay, yeah, we just did a rewatch
15,
of it a couple years ago.
14. Yeah,
I mean, it's definitely like it gets not as good in the 9th or 10th season.
Yeah, I've heard.
But it's still like it's a solid show throughout.
Yeah,
and
I'm having a great time right now. It really is one of those things where like you put on an episode, you know you're gonna have a good time. You know it's gonna be dramatic. It's gonna be a little funny. They really don't make TV like this anymore, except they do. It's called The Pits, but still,
with the same cast.
But still,
no, with
just
this, Noah
Wiley, just Noah Wiley. But yeah, who is great on ER as John Carter. So
he is. He was also so young when he started that show.
Now I'm worried I'm screwing it up.
No, Carver's the older doctor.
Well, yeah. Now I'm just worried. It is John Carter. I said
Carter.
That, and then I was like, I was like, wait, isn't that the Disney movie / like legendary sci-fi book? But you know what I mean. I was like, is my brain? No, it's fine. We're good. I had it right. Jules, you can cut this.
Okay, so go watch ER. My what's making me happy this week is also something you should watch. It is not 42 minutes of perfect network television, but it's close.
Yeah,
it's 21 minutes of perfect YouTube. It's the Windows Vista retrospective that our colleague Alex Doby put together for the XDA YouTube channel. And I thought I knew a lot about Vista because I lived through Vista, but I did not know about Vista until I watched this video. It is impeccably researched.
Glassy window borders with a pixel shader blur effect, along with 3D window animations, contributed to a UI that seemed for 2006 impressively futuristic.
I mean, I think it was like 15 virtual machines he created to run different versions of Vista / Longhorn based on all the betas and leaked versions that are available. And he showed off like the early versions of Longhorn all the way through the most recent Vista service packs. And we're talking like 2003, when development of Longhorn began in earnest, through the second service pack, which was released in 2009. And just the changes that happened throughout that life cycle, incredible. The fact that Vista was as hated as it was not really about the fact that it was a bad operating system, the way that like Windows Millennium Edition was objectively bad. It was that it was so heavy that people upgrading from Windows XP it was basically like downgrading your PC. Like it was like pulling 2 pieces of RAM from it. And like, anyway, it was remarkable to me. I loved this video. Alex is so good at what he does, and I cannot recommend enough this full 21-minute video that you should definitely spend some time watching. And that's it. That's my.
I have it pinned. I'm going to check it out. Sorry, my computer froze again.
No, I see it. I see you're now.
Am I not back? It's fine now.
No, you're back. You're back.
Okay.
You're back.
Okay, good.
You're still a bit delayed, but you're fine. All right, that's the show. Send your feedback. podcast@androidpolice.com. Jules, thank you for being you. We love you. And are you going away next week? Are you doing anything fun? Will?
No, I'm not. What am I doing next week?
No.
It's Mother's Day next weekend. I guess I'll do something for that.
Yes, you should.
I'm trying. I have I'm seeing Magdalene Bay on Tuesday. I'm very excited for that.
I don't know what that is.
It's an indie pop. I've definitely talked about their album on the show before, but indie pop duo that I think you would really like.
Oh yeah, I remember you telling me that. I'm seeing Talib Kweli next week.
Oh, that's cool. That's fun.
Yeah, very
Toronto
random.
gets all the shows. I'm not going to swear. Toronto gets all the shows. I'm so mad. You guys really ruin it for us. Every tour skips over and just goes Toronto to Ohio. It just sucks.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I forgive you.
All right. Well, send Will all the concerts that you are seeing that aren't in Buffalo.
Yeah, exactly.
podcast@androidpolice.com. We love hearing from you. And we will talk to you next week. We love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.